Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Today we're going to talk about the friendship between Queen Elizabeth and Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill became Prime Minister after Neville Chamberlain was forced to resign. Elizabeth's father, King George VI, preferred Chamberlain, and he then suggested Lord Halifax, but he didn't want the job, so King George VI had to go with Winston Churchill. According to IWM.org.uk, the king had grave doubts about Churchill and believed that he lacked judgment. Churchill had supported George's older brother. He had abdicated the throne to marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee. This had annoyed the royal family. But later, Elizabeth's father and Winston became great friends. So let us find out how the friendship went from Elizabeth's father to Elizabeth when they first met. Elizabeth met Winston when she was just 2 years old. As Chancellor of the Exchequer until 1929, he visited Balmoral, and Churchill wrote of the incident in a letter to his wife. Churchill said in his letter, "There was no one there at the time of the visit except the family, the household, and 2-year-old Elizabeth. The latter is a character," he mused, describing her as having an air of authority and reflectiveness astonishing in an infant. After the first meeting, they had few interactions until she became the queen. Elizabeth was only 13 when the war broke out, so she thought of Churchill as a hero who had saved the nation from Hitler and Nazi military machine. And Elizabeth was only 19 when the war ended, and Churchill became an icon to the British public, thanks to his leadership skills. They meet again with Elizabeth as queen. When King George VI died in 1952, Winston was upset. He and Elizabeth's father had formed a friendship through the years that King George was king, and Winston felt that Queen Elizabeth was too young to be a queen. I can imagine how he would feel that way, because when you see someone in their youth, it's hard to picture them as an adult. You always keep thinking them as a child at times. And Meetings.com stated, Churchill's private secretary said Churchill would find the new queen intelligent, conscientious, and charming. However, Churchill replied, "I hardly know her, and she's only a child." But Colville knew better, as he had served as Princess Elizabeth's private secretary from 1947 to 1949, and found her to be a highly conscientious young woman with wisdom way beyond her years. So when Churchill met with Elizabeth, he had to agree with his private secretary's assessment of her, and Churchill's daughter, Mary, said that her father was instantly captivated with her, and he felt her immense sense of duty early on. So their meetings would take place on Tuesday afternoons, and Winston looked forward to it. They would discuss matters of state, and he would share his experience and expertise. Winston respected her, although he had disagreed with previous monarchs, including King Edward VI, King George V, and even King George VI during World War II. He never disagreed with Elizabeth II. His immense sense of duty matched her own, and it was said that their views were always in accordance. He spoke eloquently of how the Queen was incredibly gifted, commanding the loyalty of her native land, the British Commonwealth, and the Empire. Churchill, who was born during the reign of Queen Victoria in November 1874, said he once more felt a thrill in singing the national anthem, God Save the Queen, when Queen Elizabeth was crowned. How Elizabeth felt about Winston. About Meetings.com said the Queen enjoyed Churchill's company as much as he enjoyed hers. Colville wrote that she had more fun during her audiences with him than with any of his successors. Their conversations, although about important matters of state, were not without humor, and they were described as being punctuated with peals of laughter. They had a bond and a similar perspective to how to see things due to the war. She looked to him for guidance on how she must conduct herself and admired his wisdom and eloquence. Winston retired due to health reasons. Winston was forced to resign due to health issues. He wrote about the importance of his role as the Queen's constitutional tutor, describing how he had always strived to keep Her Majesty up to date with the grave and complex problems of the era. He described how the Queen's wise and lively upbringing had prepared her well for the duties of the modern sovereign, which she understood by instinct, praising her royal resolve to serve as well as to rule. The admiration of Churchill and Queen Elizabeth II never faltered, and she sent him a handwritten letter back assuring him that no subsequent prime minister would ever hold the place of her first one, who had provided such wise guidance during the early years of her reign. And Elizabeth knighted him. Independent.uk.com said, Queen Elizabeth never forgot all that Winston had done for her, and she offered him a dukedom on his retirement. Afterwards, with tears in his eyes, he said, "I very nearly accepted. I was so moved by her beauty and charm and the kindness with which she made this offer, but I remember that I must die as I have always been, Winston Churchill." Later, he reluctantly accepted a knighthood, probably because he didn't want to hurt her feelings. He had always said he wanted no memorial except perhaps a park for children to play in. Elizabeth said Winston was her favorite prime minister. When asked who her favorite prime minister was, Elizabeth reportedly said, "Winston, of course, because it was always such fun." They shared hobbies including horse racing and polo, and they were known to have plenty of lighthearted moments. As the Queen's private secretary, Sir Tommy Lascelles, put it, "I could not hear what they talked about, but it was more often than not punctuated with peals of laughter, and Winston generally came out wiping his eyes." So Queen Elizabeth gave him a state funeral. Queen Elizabeth II gave special permission for him to lie in state at Westminster Hall for 3 days before he was given a state funeral. Winston remains one of only 3 British prime ministers to have received a state funeral, along with Arthur Wellesley, 1st Duke of Wellington, and William Gladstone. Traditional state funerals are reserved for the monarchy. The Queen Mother and Prince Philip were a lower-ranking ceremonial description. Express.co.uk said, "State funerals are conducted according to strict protocol and are a public ceremony held in honor of a person of national significance. Paid for by the public, they require the assent of both the Crown and Parliament." Arrangements for Sir Winston's funeral were planned years in advance under the code name Operation Hope Not. However, the Queen personally wrote to Parliament to express her desire that the entire nation should have the opportunity to express their sorrow over his passing. And the Queen broke protocol by arriving at the funeral first. The Queen is supposed to be the last to arrive, and Queen Elizabeth was so respectful and loving toward Winston and his family. She arrived first, not to distract from the family and their grief. It was so respectful of her. So it's amazing that Winston was able to meet the Queen when she was like the young age of 2. But even at that young age, as an adult, Winston could see a regalness about her. And when she became Queen, Winston felt she was too young, but he hadn't seen much of her through the years. And when his secretary said she had wisdom beyond her years, Winston had to agree once he met her. Winston became her mentor and her friend, and they were lucky to have become friends, and that Elizabeth had his advice on matters that only he had so much experience and could guide her with. England and the Commonwealth could be glad for it too. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the video, and if you did, if you could give it a thumbs up, it would be greatly appreciated. Also, if you haven't already, if you could click the notification bell, you'll get word when a new video has been released. So I hope everybody's been having a good day, and tune in again soon for another episode of Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Thank you. Bye.